Hey, this is actor Michael Broderick. Welcome to your Break It Down show. Now, this show has been bringing you fascinating guests and the ground truth for over 1,000 episodes now. Congratulations, Pete, on that huge milestone. Today's guest is actor Benjamin Madrid, currently starring in the film No Place. Now, in the film, Benjamin plays Mac, a fella traveling the country looking for his next hustle. He soon discovers, however, that his past has caught up with him, and he may not make it out alive. So stick around to hear more about No Place. And while I have you, I'd like to encourage you to seek out my recent short film, Fathers and Sons. Based in the world of Jack Carr's The Terminal List, this original piece was written by Navy veteran Vernon Mortensen, directed by Army veteran Ryan Curtis, and stars myself and Army Ranger Tim Abel. You can find Fathers and Sons on Vimeo. Speaking of veterans, if you know of a veteran struggling with their transition to civilian life, please direct them to gallantfew.org. Gallant Few serves veterans from any branch, any era, anywhere. They aid in veteran transition by providing one-on-one mentorship, thereby facilitating a peaceful, successful transition from military service to a civilian life filled with hope and purpose. Now, here's Pete A. Turner and your Break It Down show.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The
This
Offspring.
is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Ames.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is Benjamin Madrid, and this is the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on the show and hanging out with us. You know, over the years, we've had a lot of actors, writers, producers on the show, and I am just fascinated by indie movies. You know, I don't care if you went out and just got out and pirated it and got it done for $8,000, or, you know, you had a six-figure budget and got it done. I just love that. I love the spirit of it more than anything else. So yeah, you might see an indie movie and maybe it's not perfect. And I'm not talking about your movie, just in general in the industry. The shots may not be very have the same quality, but I don't care, because there's a realness to these projects, and I just love the spirit of adventure. I mean, making a movie is impossible, as you probably know. It's just, there are so many barriers: money, time, COVID. I mean, on and on and on reasons why there shouldn't be a movie like No Place. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the industry and I mean, how do you love the spirit of it?
So, I mean, that's the thing that I'm most proud of. And of course, I love that you say that, because a lot of people don't sort of realize that. These things always start, you know, in somebody's garage, or in our case, a coffee shop. You know, I talk to a lot of actors, and they'll ask me, well, how'd you do it? That kind of thing. And I always think that, I always say, you know, anytime you go dig into an actor's story, it's going to be amazing, because they're doing the impossible. And I would say that that's the same with filmmakers, you know, and really anybody that wants to be in this business. I mean, we're in Indiana, so I'm in Indianapolis. We don't have a film community. We don't have unions. We had to build a film community in order to make a movie. So it's ridiculous to think that you could go do that. And then to get distribution, it's all about networking, about being nice. We can't just call up guys to come in and do audio for the most part. No Place was built because the commercial market here is pretty strong. So not a film community, commercial, all commercial people. So they're pros. A lot of the actors in this movie were people that I'd worked on. I'm sort of a workhorse commercial actor. That's what I started doing. You always want to do film, but you go where the money is. And so we started in commercials, all of us. Peter Matsoukas, the director and writer, he was nice enough to give me a co-writing credit in the end. But to be honest, Pete wrote this sucker. We kept running into each other at Starbucks. I'm a Starbucks guy. I'm always in them. I'm writing. I don't write at home. This is my wife's office. I don't have an office at home. I'm not a guy at home. I got to leave the house. We kept running into each other, and we had worked on a short film. And Peter said, you know, I want to do a feature. And I said, well, here's where I'm at in my career. Here's what I want out of it. And I have a lot of contacts in the commercial world. I had not only been an actor, but at one point I went and worked as a business development director for a pretty reputable commercial agency called Helen Wells in Indianapolis. And I did that so that I could learn all of the information that I didn't have as an actor. I'd done 400 or 500 commercials, and I was like, there's this black hole of information that you don't get being an actor, where you're like, what is working in an agency about? So I left acting for a year and a half, 2 years, and went and worked for an agency to help them open other offices and to dig in, knowing that I would eventually go back to acting and but have that information. So it is DIY, man. It's out of the garage, which isn't to say that they're not all, that everybody that worked on the family wasn't, or on the film wasn't a pro. I always like to mention that these guys were all professionals in the commercial world and had all dabbled, I think, in the creative film world. So a little bit here and there. So that's a long-winded answer. But yes, I agree with you. It's awesome and super DIY.
And there's also a landscaper right outside my tent right now with the blower, so that long answer was not even long enough.
Go all day. Are you in a yurt? I have to ask, what's happening?
Yeah, it's super loud right now, but I'm in a tent in the backyard, right? It's like a bell tent, so it's like a yurt with a hat on it. And it's because of COVID, it gets crowded in the house. I'm trying to run a show. My girlfriend's trying to run a business. We got 2 kids in university. All 4 of us living in a 1,400 square foot house.
Yeah, I had to banish my son to another room. He's on the treadmill. My wife has been kicked out of her office. She's on the couch. This is COVID, and we're doing it. So I love it.
I saw an interview with Jon Favreau today on Good Morning America. And this is Jon Favreau, probably the hottest director in this moment right now with them. And I don't even know anything about The Mandalorian, but I know enough to know that he crushed it. And his his wireless connection's all crappy. He sounds terrible. And I'm like, this is COVID. Katie Couric is doing interviews at her house and her wireless is terrible. She sounds terrible. So if there's a leaf blower in the background, you know what? We're creating stuff. I wanted to dive in a little more into this indie nature, this DIY nature, because the good thing is that accidents can happen on a gigantic movie, with a budget, everything's accounted for and everyone's accounting for, everybody else is accounting for. And it's just, there's not a lot of room for magic to happen. And I'm being unfair to the big movies, but there are a lot more known unknowns in a big movie than there are when you go out around indie and you get a movie. And by the way, the shots in the bars were just fantastic. But you don't get those buildings in California. You can't make them. So I want to say that was a great thing that you guys did. But I noticed that when you in particular would have scenes and you're exchanging lines, there's a lot of space, and it was sort of I don't know. I don't know how to characterize it, so I'm going to do my best. It seemed halting, and like you guys are maybe I was trying to decide what was happening with that. Was that by design? Is that just the level of what you guys are doing, or help me understand that part, because I think there's some design in that.
Well, I think part of what I brought to this film, it's not crazy out of character, this guy, from me personally. I mean, they say write what you know, film for the sets you can shoot in. You do that when you're shooting DIY, or when you're shooting a film like this. I started out as a comic. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time on stage as a comedian. I studied at Second City and the Groundlings in LA, and we used people in this movie that are, like I said, commercial actors, and so they read the lines and they repeat the lines. I'm not a repeater of lines. It would drive Peter nuts. I would never work for Sorkin, right, just to be honest with you.
Yeah. I thought about Sorkin and how this was, and trying to sort out what I was seeing. That's why I'm asking. It's perfect.
I'd be like, you don't want me, Sorkin. I'll think about it. I'm spitting out lines that are Peter written, and then I think that's why he gave me a co-writing thing in the end. I cannot memorize lines. I'm not a line memorizer after all these commercial years. And I think it sounds more realistic when I take it and put it in my own words. And that was something we had to learn together right off the bat. Thankfully, Peter was smart enough to know, let's let these actors go at it a little bit and go back and forth, and we'll keep some lines and we'll try and move the plot along, but let's let them go. So maybe that's what you're seeing. As a, I have trouble watching it one dimensionally myself because I was there.
Yeah.
That you always hear actors say, I didn't watch it, I'm not going to watch it.
Right.
It is really tough to watch and not think about, I remember what that scene was written as. I know how it came out in the end. And for some scenes, it's miles apart from what Peter wrote originally, from what we talked through in multiple, coffee shop conversations. And so maybe you're seeing that. Could be editing as well.
And I don't mean to indicate in any way. I just want to be clear for the audience that this was bad. I thought what this was, it was always like two people trying to figure it out, trying to sort out what it was. And this is in general, so the lady in the bar who gives you the next job, all these interchanges. It's like you both have to pause a little bit to think about what you're going to say, because you're both playing a game of survival and the next word might be there. So that's kind of how I took it. Was like, it wasn't measured. It was frantic and slow at the same time, because, crazy things happen to this dude. Crazy things happen to the people who love this dude. And so everybody's hedging a little bit. That's kind of how I took it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love hearing that from people, how they broke it down. I always have trouble knowing how people are going to take it in the end, because I just kind of put my mind in the character and then I go with it. And at some point I just had to decide, show business wise, that I was going to drop everything I knew about what we were shooting, about where my marks are. You just drop it all and forget about it and leave it to the DP and Peter. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You can block me out and decide where I'm going to go in this scene, but I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
And it's your job to follow me. And I just let it go, even though in the back of my head, I know where that light is. I know where I'm supposed to be. I know where my marks are. In the end, you just let it go and be like, they're going to hate me, but we're going to just do it. That's really hard coming from a commercial background. You don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was hard to be comfortable with your character as I watched it, right? And again, I watch a lot of movies, and so I'm like, I bet this guy is just a pain in the ass. Like, I'm knowing your guy as you're playing him. I'm like, man, like, I just don't want this guy to come see me and be like, hey, listen, I love you, but goddamn, you're hard to get along with. Like,
Yeah.
you just, and that's, and I'm thinking that I got that right, because it was so much. And then Peter did a great job with that. Like, you just felt like, oh man, like it was uncomfortable, but in a way that made sense because of what the movie's about.
Good. I appreciate that. That's a great compliment. I love that you saw that. It's my favorite to hear people that know, of course, nothing about the movie or us. I'd be curious. So did you think then, when you were going to run into me in the interview, you were like, shit, this guy's going to be trouble?
Oh, no. I mean, I know you're acting. I mean, even if you're not acting and you were cast perfectly because you are who you are. No, I mean, yeah. There's actually the next movie I'm going to do that happened to me. Yeah. Literally, it's in a couple hours, and it's another indie movie, and it's a guy who is just such a dick to his girlfriend, and they have this crap weekend, and I'm like, man, I don't actually interview the actor, in this case, the director, but I'm definitely going to ask him about it, and I think these things deserve credit. So we had Andy Summers from The Police on the show at one point. And we don't want to talk about The Police because that's like 40 years ago, but still there's certain questions I want to ask. So I don't know how well you know the album Synchronicity, but there's that song about Mother. And I'm like, was that supposed to be just an uncomfortable, nasty song on purpose? And he's like, yes, of course. It's about mothers, And I'm like, yeah, okay, good. I get it then. Then it's great. You did your job. You made this song that just makes you just go, that's the worst song on this stupid album. But in a lot of ways, it's perfect because he's creating this emotion. And if you nail it, it doesn't matter which emotion, he nailed it,
Right. I was trying to think of a back scene sort of scenario where that kind of thing happened. There's so many backstories, of course, in every film that gets made. Forba Shepard, who plays Les, the fixer in this movie, has been doing theater in New York for years. And she and I are good friends. We both have the same commercial agent. We sort of been around each other a lot.
Yeah.
Forba and I struggled a lot in our scenes because Forba knows her shit, for one.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can swear on this podcast.
I think you should fucking say what you want.
Okay, good. I should have asked that up front. Forba, and I'm an improv guy. So
Right.
here you bring in this thing where she's like, you can't do that. Right. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to make you so uncomfortable in this. I can't wait. And you probably see it in those scenes too. I think Forba probably nailed all her lines, and she was miserable because I changed everything on her at all times, which sort of forces you to be present. I would love to say that I did that on purpose. I think Marlon Brando read lines off of other people. Not as a comparison, but I just mean he always claimed, some people claimed, well, I couldn't memorize lines. That's one thought. And the other people, I think he said, well, I always want to be present. I would totally be honest with you and say, I love being present. I love listening, but I'm not a memorizer of lines. I would say, where's the scene going? What are we doing? I'd obviously go read my stuff. And if Peter had a great line, I would nail it. But I was all over the place. And I like doing that. Kudos to Peter, because I think you probably want to throw me through a window.
Yeah, but if it's working, it's working. And I'm big on affect over effect. And if you're trying to figure out what I'm supposed to feel at the end of this, or more importantly, what your guy feels, you're gonna have a better chance of bringing that forward. And there is a lot to be said for. Let me see if I can say this right. I've done a zillion interviews. I used to be a spy, and so I know what questions to ask. I know I listen for things, not to people, right? Because I want to be present. And when I hear what I need, I stop everything and I focus on that area. So I don't care what you say next. I care what I hear and go, can I work with that? Okay, that's great. Right. That's just service level truth. We move on. And I think the same thing is true for Marlon Brando. It's like, you don't hire Marlon Brando to read lines. You hire him to act like the person that you created these lines for. And the lines for him, if I can speak for a guy who's dead and a way better actor than I've ever been, he didn't need the lines. The lines were a guide as to who this person was and how he acted. And once he knew that, he could say anything, and you couldn't think of the things that he would say, and that'd be what he came up with most of the time would be better.
Right. I think that probably really speaks very highly. I think that's the most impressive thing I've seen with Peter Matsoukas, that's the director here. Most people starting out in film, and I haven't had a tremendous amount of experience in the film world. I worked with Barry Anderson, the Lumber Baron, which is how I found distribution for this movie. Again, networking. But most directors they're not going to be comfortable with you doing that, with you running all over the place. They just think, what's going on? Do I look bad to the crew? I would imagine Peter would think, is this going to work out? Or this guy's off the cuff? But I think, he really trusted me and let me go through it. We weren't watching. Peter was watching dailies, I should say. Peter was watching some dailies at the end of the night when we would get finished, but I didn't get to see them.
Right.
But kudos to him as a newer filmmaker. I know he's done some other work too, but kudos to him for letting it go. I think the smartest thing you could do as a newer filmmaker is write the script and just know that the beauty of it is you're going to tear it apart. You're going to bring all these people in to paint on a canvas, and it is not going to look like it did at the end. And that's great. That's a good thing.
Yeah. No, it is a good thing. And I'm thinking about your character and the kind of guy he was. And someone early on says he was a shark. I mean, that's exactly what the movie is. There's this guy that he's in perpetual motion. And the one time when he's knocked unconscious, nothing happens. You don't see it, but then next thing you know, he's like right back to being a shark, and a guy like that is, if you're going to be true to the character, I can see why it would be hard to have someone other than you, because you might look over at a storefront and be like, I need to go over there because there's something I need to interact with. And I'm not saying that you're going to not be a professional or anything, but this guy might sense blood in the water and be like, there's $500 over there. And that guy needs $500 every moment of the movie. He needs $500, So I can see that. It's interesting that you're comfortable doing that and then that Peter is able to allow you that freedom. Where does that come from between you guys?
The allowing of the freedom, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it comes back to those conversations where Peter and I sit down and you start to build some real trust with each other. Peter, I always sort of make fun of him. If he were to show you, he has this day planner, and he would open up his day planner in front of me, and it looks like a serial killer's day planner. I have ADHD. I don't know if Peter does. I think he probably does, or something, because you would see the days before scribbled out like a madman. Like
Right.
I did whatever those tasks were and I'm done. Like he's a taskmaster and a taskmaster in that regard. And so he would come and just sort of listen to me talk at the coffee shop, and he'd be like, well, I'm thinking about Mac doing something. And what do you think? Would you do that? And we would have conversations back and forth where I'd be like, well, I'll tell you a time, because being an actor in Indiana is a bit of a con job. You just don't do it. Being a comedian is a bit of a con. You always have to pretend that you're better than you are. You always hear comedians say, well, how many minutes do you have? And other comedians will know that if you say you have 20 minutes, that world is very time-based. You have 20 minutes. What they really know is you have 5 minutes. You don't have 20 minutes. You can carry for 20 minutes, but you only have 5 minutes. And we just get used to living in that world of deceiving. And I don't think it's very far from being a con artist. I always loved Fletch when I was a kid, and how he would open up his he'd open up his wallet and he had all the different names in it.
Yeah.
In high school, I bought a wallet that would flip open and have all the names, and I had all my IDs, and it was great. I don't know if you've ever heard of what's his name? Catch Me If You Can. He's like the greatest con artist.
Yeah. The Leonardo DiCaprio character. The Frank, whatever his name was.
Frank Abagnale.
There you go.
My mother let me listen to his podcast of something on the radio when I was a kid, and she's like, see, he really turned his life around. Not what I heard. I heard, this is amazing. I want to be a great I want to be a great thief. So I learned that, and then how to do that and not get in trouble and figure out how to make that a business. And so I think Peter saw that part of my life and was just like, how are you functioning as a human? And I was like, you had con people. That's what we do. And so I think that part of the character I brought to it. I mean, that's my real life experience. The shark thing I used with my wife when we started dating. She said, you sound like a shark. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, well, I've been bitten a lot by guys like you, and I don't think it's a good idea. And I was like, oh, that's probably true. But you're also really attracted to that. I mean, you are at the tank talking to the shark. She was like, yeah, that's true. I'm just trying to decide if I want to get in the water with you. And I'm like, you do.
So we know what happens here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's hilarious.
So that's why I ended up, I think, getting co-writing credit, is that in the end we would have moments like that where I'd talk and he'd be like, what? Who talks like that? And I'd be like, I don't know. I guess maybe I do. Although Mac was probably more of a womanizer than me. I fought for a lot more nudity in this movie. And we didn't end up having near as much. Not my own nudity. Just I fought for Mac being a real womanizer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really wanted him to be. I wanted to show a lot of it. But it's you got to try and tone it down a little, I guess. And the next one, so much nudity, Pete. So much. There will be so much.
Good. We'll go softcore on that one. I want to come back to that in a second. I wanted to make sure I said this. Everybody, the movie we're talking about is called No Place, and Benjamin's in it. And I got a real kick out of it. I think it's great. And again, it's a time of COVID. So Christ almighty, spend $6 or whatever it is on a movie. It isn't that much. And this is how these indie movies get made is, they go out and they prove that they can do it. They sell the rights internationally. And then someone's like, hey, Peter, you delivered. Let's go again. And you get movies that have literally no chance. I mean, look, it's not a superhero movie. It's not a sequel. It's not a prequel. It's not an in-betweenquel. It's not a redo, like it's just a real movie of real people doing things. And that's what I love about indie movies is like, if you're tired of all of these things, look, those Star Wars movies are probably great. I got blown out on them. I'm just like, it's too much. It's too much. Like the special effects aren't even special anymore. It's like, I don't care. But in these real movies, I love foreign films for the same reason. Like if you give me a movie made in Sweden, I love it because everybody's not perfect. They're a little chubby. The clothes are a little bit weird, and so I just love the fact that it's real people. And I often forget that I'm watching a movie when I watch indie movies or foreign films because everything isn't planned out. So definitely a big endorsement from me on No Place. And if you buy it on Amazon on the link that's on the screen, we get a little bump. And then of course, the folks at the movie, Amazon's going to say, hey, who are these guys? And maybe they'll make a movie for Amazon. So, but let's get back into the nudity part because that's important to recognize. There was a lot of smoking in this movie that you don't see that very much.
Yes. Right. I do smoke. So that became, we tossed that in. I mean, it's a noir movie, right? So there are some real tropes in there that you want to toss in. Lots of guns, smoking. You got to have the girl or girls, I did smoke. It's a terrible habit. I hate it. It's one thing I hang on to. I shouldn't. I totally hang on to it. To be honest with you, it's my favorite thing is because it allows me to step away from people, which I'm believe it or not, an introvert, sort of an introvert. I don't love. I love being on stage in front of people because it's one direction. They don't get to talk to me back. Well, some of them like to talk to me back, but they're not supposed to. So I'm sort of an introvert. I think when I was a kid, my parents would say there was this billboard in town that said, smoking eliminates friends and family. And I would always say, do you promise?
Right.
That sounds pretty great.
Yeah.
To me. I smoked a lot in the movie. Afton smoked a bit. But that's pretty old school, right? You're not supposed to do that. It also dates a movie a little bit. We talked about a time in this movie. What time does this movie take place? And a lot of this, time now in movies gets, will take you out of it based on what kind of iPhones that you're using. That's a real time-based thing in a movie. So we tried to make sure that there was not a lot of Mac's not Googling stuff.
Right.
He's not. He probably should be, but he's not there. Even if you look at our Instagram channel, Mac takes on a tone of, I guess I had to get Instagram. He's trying to talk to his nephew. So we kept that voice on Instagram where he's like, I think this is how this works. And he takes kind of terrible pictures. And he did it just to kind of connect with his nephew, which he does in the movie. He's tried to redeem himself from a life of low-level, terrible decisions. It's kind of the idea.
Well, at one point he borrows money from the kid and he's like, I'll pay you back. And I believe he genuinely wants to do that. Like, he's like, I've got to be better about this. I really am going to hold myself accountable. But he's also perfectly fine never paying him back, just because things happen and things happen to Mac all the time.
Yeah. I think he's crossed the line that we would never cross so many times that it sort of gets pretty blurred with him. And he's definitely done that with women. I know you wanted to get back to the nudity. I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah. I specifically about Mac, I mean, your guy. So does he just want anything with two legs and a lovely place to put his thing? Or is he like I can talk better looking chicks into having sex with me? Like, where does he sit on that?
I think he likes the chase. And he likes to be able to chase really gorgeous women, I always felt like. And I think for him, it was more of a, and don't equate this with me. It was a, can I get this done? Can I do it? And then I'm going to leave because I'm just not interested after that point. So he's sort of scummy in that way. And I think that's what makes it nice about Evelyn is that he finally runs into another shark.
Right.
Who at the end sort of takes his heart a little bit, and he's like, I can't believe I got taken by that lady. And then, he's standing at the end with a gun over the top of her, and she's like sort of falling apart. And he's like, I don't know if I should buy this. There was a scene that got dropped out of the movie. Maybe it could go in the director's cut, where they meet at the beginning and they're sort of walking along, and you see that spark happen with her, and you see her be a little bit more of a shark in that regard. But yeah, I think Mac goes for the ones that he doesn't think he can get, just like the cons. There's a part of that that's an enjoyable game.
Yeah.
It's a game, like playing pool.
Really, for those guys, he doesn't need Google. His answer is his gut. And look, let's be honest, he gets it wrong over the course of his life as much, if not more, than he gets it right. But he likes that risk, like he is a gambler when it comes to these. At least it seems like to me. And again, that's one of the things I enjoyed about it was this guy. I didn't know if there was going to be a happy ending. I was prepared for him to die, prepared for him to kill somebody. Who knows what happens? And I'm not going to reveal anything about the movie in particular, but it's just, you're left in this uncomfortable shark-like world where you might get eaten, or you might not. Maybe you find out the guy's great to have a drink with, but don't keep him around too long. He's kind of a bad pet to have,
Yeah, you don't want him as a pal for a long time, that's for sure, or a real friend. You always want to know a guy. I have a guy on my phone that says Las Vegas guy. I don't know who he is. I met him once in Las Vegas, and I kind of felt like I really want somebody in my phone called Las Vegas guy, that if I needed to call and have several weird things brought to a hotel, even though I wouldn't, I want him in my phone. I just want to know one of those kind of guys. So I think Mac is one of those kind of guys where you're like, I think I know a guy who probably could do that kind of a thing. Yeah. But also when he runs into the gun dealer, played by Hugo Bolden, who is a super fun character. I love him so much. He's also knows when he runs up against another one not to totally mess around too much. Don't just be honest about what you're doing, because some situations are too bad and it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. He knows when to back out.
I don't want to spoil that scene because it's a great scene and he is a great character. But did Mac know, not care, or somewhere in between? Did
he know that he was a rough character?
That, like when he gets the gun pointed at him, when because he's making a gamble there, right? Like he's playing him straight. He's honest when he could lie. You could see him make that decision, but I was trying to decide, like, if he knew, if he had read something, or if he just didn't care, or if it was somewhere in between. That's what I was trying to figure out. And maybe there's not a good answer for that.
I don't think Mac knew who he was dealing with there, but Mac doesn't deal with a lot of guns. Right. I get the feeling that he stays on the fringes and is like, listen, there's a bad world out there, and anything over, let's say, $5,000 is probably not a game I want to get into. I can live pretty well on a couple of grand. I always felt like I wrote a big backstory for Mac, that's never in the movie, just so that when I had to make decisions, I'd be like, nah, I don't think Mac would mess with that. He's not, robbing banks. He might a small town little deal, but he knows where his strengths lie. And I think when he got in with that guy, he was like, this doesn't feel good. Whatever this situation is, I don't like this guy. And so when Hugo drops the gun dealer, not to give away too much, but he, at one point he sort of drops the accent a little bit, and that he's also sort of playing in a world that maybe he doesn't belong in. We always wondered, where did that character go to school? Maybe, like, is this guy an Ivy League guy or something who's much brighter than that? But sometimes they dabble in this gross world because, I don't know, maybe they're addicts or they can't get out or whatever the case is. They're not dumb guys, right? I mean, they're pretty savvy about stuff, and they know when they're in hot water. I think he knew he was in some trouble there, and knew not to mess around with the guy. Just tell him, don't try and smoke him out like you might a girl. You're not gonna win. Just tell him you got $400 and buy the smallest gun you can, because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to tell him you got $5,000, because then you are going to have something happen to you.
And he did have to back out. I think at one, not to give too much up, but he did get in some trouble in that scene and decided, okay, I'm not going to win this with sweet talk. So let me just be straight up honest.
And you see him make that, and this is a credit to you as an actor. You see him make that decision and kind of like weigh that and say, yeah, this, let me play this. I'll just be honest,
Yep.
Do you think he knew the guy's brother?
I think he remembered the situation and was like, this is maybe maybe I've been doing this too long, because I do sort of remember something about a guy. I get the feeling though that Mac probably stays at hotels under a different name and is always like, there's always probably going to be somebody knocking on the door at some point. It's just, do they want money from me? Are they going to beat me up? Or are they going to shoot me?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. He's always sort of looking behind. He's, he doesn't know what his credit score is.
Yeah. And again, the movie's called No Place, you guys, and you should definitely check it out. It kind of, it reminded me a little bit of Ransom, except for Mac is like 70% of what, Mel Gibson's character was. And Mel Gibson's character is a lot more like, big leagues. He's going for the top and just for the point of it. But, very, very similar vibe, and there have to be, minor league sharks out there. They can't all be, top of the chain, because they're sharks and they would kill each other. I wanted to back out
too.
What's that?
To do that. I think it seems less realistic. We watch so many movies where the Joker backs the truck into the bank and it's amazing. And you're like, God, that's the best heist. I love the heist. I love Heat. I love all those things.
Yeah. But
something about a guy living in a small town who has a record, but just continually evades. That's more interesting to me. And I think Peter too was somebody that you were like, oh, I think that guy might actually, in real life, if we were to run into him at Target, you'd be like telling your kids, yeah, let's just steer clear of that guy. I don't know what it is about him.
Right.
But I know he did some time and I don't like it.
Well, the other thing is in real life, like right now, like I don't make a lot of money. If someone dropped $5,000 in my lap, I would be like, oh my God, like it would change like the next 3 months of my life. Right. If I was a low level criminal and I had a chance to do like a $25,000 score, I'd be like, I don't know. And then I just blow that money just as fast. Like if you brought 50 grand in or something, you'd be like, I'd just be in the same spot. And the risk, I don't think so. Like I can see him being like that where, these scores that are measurable and then almost undetectable, you can have a lot of people pissed off at you, but if you keep moving, it's going to be hard for them to catch you.
Yeah, because those guys aren't Google guys either. Like they're not gonna go track you down on Facebook and try and figure out where Mac is. No. So if he keeps it low and he just sort of pisses people off and doesn't really, hurt anybody, he's probably safe. I think he only runs into trouble there with, when he starts messing with other guys' wives, which I don't think is also something Mac doesn't do. I don't think he's that concerned about it.
Yeah,
he'll cross that line.
Well, yeah, I can see that being the case. Okay, so let's get out of the movie for a little bit because I don't want to spoil it for everybody. I know that like I enjoyed watching it, and there's time to think and understand what's going on. I wanted to get into your guy Mac does some stand up in the movie as well. Are you acting as Mac doing stand up, or are you just like, this is how stand up works and I'm going to perform that? Does Mac know what he's doing?
I don't, we talked a little bit about that because I had some more experience being on stage, and I always looked at it how other comedians looked at it, and I was like, what kind of comedian is Mac? He's not very good. I think he's probably been doing it for 6 or 7 years, to get the attention. I always thought it was interesting that he would go up on stage if he was trying to hide from people. So I also kind of feel like that's a little game for him where he's like, here, I'm just going to pop up and do the thing that you wouldn't think I would do. It's also kind of a nice cover for him because no one would think that a comedian is probably also going out and stealing.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's not a great comic. He's getting some laughs. He's not super good at it. When he tells the joke at the end, comedians don't tell jokes usually like guy walks into a bar for the most part. Right. It's situational. But Mac can't talk about situations. I mean, when I get on stage and talk about my kids or something, that makes sense. Mac is not going to be like, how when you're robbing a guy and you get, paying a thing. So we talked a lot about what would Mac's humor be? And I think Mac is, he's sort of not good at doing comedy. He just continues to do it. When I was on stage doing it, and we went back in and shot scenes of Mac doing those comedy scenes. So we had shot the entire movie, put it all together, and I said to Pete, I really think people need to see this guy not only keeping jokes in his dictaphone while he's driving, I think they need to see him perform. Let's see him, and let's have him not be great. And the question was, well, how are you going to go in there? What are you going to do, material? And I said, no, I'll write material for these scenes because I know it's not going to be great. And I don't have to worry about it being great. And we'll get on stage with a camera in front of, a small spattering of audience in a studio, and we'll shoot it and we'll let it not be good. And don't tell the people to laugh. Let them laugh if they're going to laugh. And if they don't, then it just falls short. Let it do it. And so that was kind of easy for me as a comedian because I was like, I get to write mediocre material and then just really try and sell it. That's the opposite. That's easy.
And you also had
easy.
The space and control to let time do its job and be uncomfortable. Sometimes there's some of those comedians that let time go longer than necessary or shorter to make it funny. But you did a great job of making Matt suck with time. It's so bad.
Yeah.
The thing I would say is you're going too slow, because normally my advice is always slow down until you find too slow and then pick it up one notch and see where you're at. But Mac needed to go the other direction.
Yeah. And, Peter gets a lot of that credit for editing too, because in that scene, when you're actually shooting it, what it feels like in that room obviously is different than what it comes out on camera. I got to say, I think the hardest part for me in this movie was doing that stand-up, knowing what the audience was thinking in that moment and not being funny, because it was hard for me not to say, Peter, we got to release the B footage of that because I wasn't that bad. Just because my pride wanted me to be like, come on, Peter, I got some pretty good laughs there. I called out the audience members. I said some stuff, and Peter was like, no, we don't want that. It's too good. Because I had a couple of jokes in there where I really killed that room. They were not in the movie because that's not what Mac does. So I'm always like, let me have those for my channel or something. So
your mediocre material turned out to be a little bit pretty good sometimes.
Well, it was really hard. That was the hardest acting for me in the movie, was doing that, because I jump in a headspace of being a comic, and what I feel is the room is uncomfortable. I'm going to fix it. There's somebody that's not enjoying it, or they are weird being on camera, or we brought people in that room that were hadn't had a lot of experience on camera. So, they're weirded out by the lights, and I know that they felt like uncomfortable for me because they're like, oh, he's really bombing. And I had to assure them, hey guys, I'm fine with it. That's the point. And so I had to let them, I remember having to let them know at some point. I was like, I know this is hard for you. It's not hard for me. Just meaning not in a jerky way. I mean, like, first of all, I've died 1,000 deaths on a real stage. Oh, so many. I have the worst. I quit comedy for 6 months at one point. I had such a bad situation. I mean, it's cringeworthy. I called out somebody in the back of a room. I don't know if we have time for it, but it put me out of comedy for like 6 months. And I was like, nothing you could do or say is going to make that worse for me.
Yeah.
So I got to play this part. It's going to, and you're going to think I'm wondering where my words are, and I'm not. So it's okay. You can still talk to me after the show, where when you do a bad comedy show, people won't talk to you after, even the other, except the comedians will talk to you a ton.
Yeah.
I've always known if you do really well, the comedians will talk to you less after a show. So I know that world really well. That was the hardest part of the movie for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a blast.
Yeah, I mean, and it stood out, and it's such an interesting choice. Was that Peter's choice, yours, combined? I mean, it's such a weird fit to have this, con man, low level, thug trying to be a comedian as well. Like, it's just a unique choice.
It was Peter's idea in the beginning to have him also be a stand-up, especially low level.
Yeah.
I think though when we got to the end of the film, we had the producers. We sat down, we all watched it, and there was something missing in the overarching story of maybe we need some different VO. Maybe we need something to tie something together. And I said, I want to see Mac as a comedian. I just want to see how he does. I want to see what he wears. Who are his influences? I want to know all that stuff about this guy because it's so weird. And I was like, I don't want to see him just talking into a dictaphone. So we put the team together again, and where Peter was like, well, let's, kudos to him. He was like, well, let's go try it and see what it looks like. So we did. We went out and shot for a couple of evenings and just put it all together and made it uncomfortable. I was like, let it be uncomfortable. Let's just see what magic it happens, which I think is what you said in the beginning.
Yeah.
Be smart. Magic.
Yeah, there's magic in that. And then this has nothing to do with the movie at all, but I'd be interested to see who the fuck runs a shitty comedy room like that and gives this guy that much time. Like, he's got 30 seconds, 90 seconds, he's not a multi, like, they didn't even have a red light in that room, like, he's just talking, and I'm like, who runs a room like this, like, maybe there's some backstory.
Well, right. That's the thing. You always hear about these club owners and they paid, they didn't pay, they wrote a check and it went bad 2 months, or the comedian got angry. There's always this self-loathing as a comedian where you're like, I love the audience, I need you so bad, but I also hate all of you so much. Right. And who does run that room? And does he owe? I feel like Max got him on the ropes,
right?
Probably.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why he's up there. He's up there in the middle of nowhere doing it, and then the guy's just like, oh, God, we got to put Mac on because he's gonna, I don't think he's gonna shoot me in the leg, but he might hit me with a baseball bat if I don't put him on.
And let's be honest, who even cares who's up there right now? That crowd wasn't exactly electric,
Yeah. Oh yeah, total. Yeah, it was great to cut them in too because they were just. I think they were so uncomfortable. It was a blast. So I love uncomfortable comedy. It's my favorite thing to make people uncomfortable.
It's great. It's great. I have these characters that I play, and one of them is hey, come over here. Come here. And then once they come over, that's it. There is no tasking. There is no acknowledgement. Just, hey, come on over here. And then I just let it sit there, and it's hilarious. And then it cracks me up. I tell my daughter to do it to her friends. She works at Target. And so I'm like, please do it and let me know how it goes. Because it's just such an awkward thing, Or one of the characters my buddies and I have is inappropriate hand placement guy. And so you come up and you just give him a hug. And it doesn't have to be obscene. Just a hand on the wrong part of the torso is like, ugh.
They're like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I have this thing that I do. For the longest time, I didn't tell my new wife. This is my second marriage. And we would go out to dinner and my wife would go to the restroom or something. And I would tell the waiter, I would be like, listen, if this goes south, I just met this lady. It's a Craigslist thing. I don't know how this is going to work out. If this goes south and I got to leave, I'll come back in an hour and pay you or whatever happens. So just like let her order whatever she wants. I would give some huge backstory.
Yeah.
And then I just let my wife come out and say nothing. And I just let the waiter be weird. And she would just, my wife would always be like, he's really acting weird. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then I would just be overly nice to him, which would make the situation worse.
Right.
And he was always sort of eyeballing us like, oh, how are you guys enjoying the food?
Right.
It was just uncomfortable. Yes. And I didn't tell her for the longest time. And then I couldn't help it. It was too good. And I told her and she was like, never do that again. Never put me in that situation again. I was like, you didn't even know. It was just fun for me. I love it. It's my favorite.
So you guys got this movie out. Indican's great. They bought it up and they're distributing it with you guys. You've got it on Amazon, Hulu, all these other places. Wait, now, if I said Hulu, Vimeo for sure. I'm not sure about Hulu, but it's out there. You guys did it, and that means you get to do it again. Are you two going to partner on something? Is it time to do something else? Where are you guys at right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Peter is writing a movie now, and sort of he kind of clues me in on that. Once he gets done with the first draft, he'll let me know. Our DP is writing one now, and I'm writing. I'm going to write and direct a comedy. That's where my love is. It's a buddy cop, 70s Barney Miller style comedy. I'd like to try my hand at that, and Peter will totally be involved in that. Like I said, we built a film community to do this. So now I had to explain to all the extras the other day and all the cast members and the crew members, because they're sort of new to this world. I had to send them an email out and say, guys, this is where the real work starts. And so now is the time when you go out and you promote all of this stuff. That's what we're going to do. That's what our job looks like now. And it's really because on the next one, we're going to call the people that sold this one the most. Yeah. That's what we're going to do. And so what are you doing to make sure you're on the next one?
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Well, and
keep doing it.
This is the thing that's great when people get it. I mean, like, you're on my show. My show is very successful. It's not the end all be all. It's not Rogan or nothing, but I saw that you instantly shared, like, hey, I'm going to be on the Break It Down show. Like, this is how you do it, like you get on shows and you tell your people, watch this thing, because they want to see you, and you get it. I mean, if you're not salesperson of the year for your movie, for your book, for your whatever it is, right, no one else is going to be. So you have to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Good for you.
Yeah. I think one of the toughest parts about this too is here I am, a new, I've done a couple of other things, and then I did this movie called The Lumber Baron, and then I did this movie, and here I am having to wear a mask.
Yeah. By the way, my buddy Dan has been commenting, and I love Dan, and Dan is a giant. He's like 6'8" and probably 400 pounds, just an enormous dude. And he's like, if I did stand up, I'd have to sit down, And then he's so big, if he did inappropriate hand placement guy, like, the neck is great. Like, if I was to come up to you and just put both my hands gently on your collarbones and just lightly touch it, it's just uncomfortable. And if it doesn't make the person doing it uncomfortable, it's not uncomfortable enough. So Dan doing anything is uncomfortable because he's such a massive human. He puts his hand anywhere on you, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I love it. Yeah. It's my favorite thing, to make people uncomfortable. Yeah. One of the fantastic things that I have to pull back all the time, I got to pull back on it. But I do these interviews for the movie, or any time in life when I get to meet somebody for the first time, and you really only get 3 or 4 minutes before they get who you are and all that kind of stuff, where I really get to sort of say anything I want.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be like, I'm in a vampire club and I'm at a swinger. You could just say, and I have a real hard time in real life not using that moment to just make everyone around me uncomfortable. My wife is working on her PhD, so she lives in a very serious academic, we don't mess around kind of world. And it's one of the great joys of my life to make her so incredibly uncomfortable in front of those people. I love it so much. And she's
Yeah.
I know. There's probably a lot of people thinking, cool, keep it up.
There's so many jokes in that space. Like you'd be like a notch below, like the Rodney Dangerfield guy at a party, where you're with your wife and you say something like, is this the guy you told me about? And then, obviously she didn't say anything about him. And that guy's now going to look at her and you're like, no, probably not. It doesn't look like him. Just leave it. And then you go, I'm just joking. I know you don't believe me, but I'm just joking. And then they still won't believe it, and it'll be awkward all night. And then you can make up for it in a positive. I mean, you got to patch it over. You can't be a dick, but it's just a funny thing.
I love it, man. Awkwardness is hilarious. It's the most fun thing. It's probably control. It's probably a control thing, where you like the control and you get to control the situation. That's probably the truth. I think Galifianakis said that when he got done with his sets on The Hangover, he thought that the saddest thing he could possibly do was wear the same outfit down to the Las Vegas Strip and sort of walk around. And people will be like, oh, that's so sad that he still needs that. He needs that love so much.
Yes.
He would go out and do that.
Yeah.
I think it backfired for him, though, he said, because people wanted to take pictures with him. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, great.
Yeah.
He's just not on set. That's not fun.
It's not funny. But it is a good attempt. That uncomfortable stuff is great. One final one for me on that is I loved when I had like a regular job, especially like fast food or something. And I'd look at the person and it's like, what are you doing? And they'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm frying the chicken. And I'm like, good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walk away. Panic to compliment. It's just a weird transition, always hilarious.
Yes. I don't know what it is about that, but I love it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've had you for an hour. I don't want to have to do all the questions. You want to ask me anything at all, or should we just wrap this thing up, you think?
No, I'm loving it. I hope people go watch the movie. I enjoy watching this film community come together, do a thing, especially during COVID. It is super gratifying to, during a year where like there's this cloud hanging over us of, I don't know, uncertainty and depression and weirdness. And we've had riots and all kinds of things that are just, regardless of them needing to happen or not, it's been tough, right? You can't go to the grocery store. You can't do anything. We all know this. And here's this, to me, a real bright spot of people saying, I'm going to work through it. I'm going to get off my couch. We don't live in Hollywood. Everybody here is going to mock you until it's made, and then they won't, and you just have to keep going. I think this movie took us 2 years to put together. And gosh, I think it's, for most of it, it was just Peter and I. And then now we've had all these other people involved. And I don't know, to me, it's a really bright spot in humanity. Even though you're watching a movie and you've seen a million of them, there's a billion of them on Amazon. This one was a lot of love. Yeah. Which I think is pretty great.
And made by good people from the center of the country. And I love that. And it's on Amazon. And just type in No Place and just buy the motherfucker for the day. Come on.
Yeah.
Not that hard to do. Look, how many of us haven't spent a dime in a theater in the last year? So here's your chance. Spend it directly to these guys, and it's going to allow them to make something else and to explore these things. So definitely go support No Place. Any movie from Indican. Those guys are great. They're constantly sending me these great opportunities. And so just thank you to them. And man, seriously, Benjamin, thank you so much for coming on the show. And anytime you guys want to come on, bring Peter next time. We'll hang out. We'll talk about your stuff. It's just great to be able to promote what you're doing, because you're doing what so many of us want to do. You're really doing it. And I love it. Thank you for that.
You're doing it. Hey, thanks, man. You as well. I love talking to you in the yurt out there. The what's it called again? Tell me what it's called again.
It's a tent. It's a bell tent. It's a tent.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's outside and it's away from the house, and it allows me to make noise. So,
Right. Yeah.
All right.
I love it.